It is Saturday morning. We are recording on Saturday, July 25th, and I am joined here by my friend Louis Biad. He is a political commentator here in the community of Doniana. Have a lot of respect for this gentleman over the years. He just has a very fascinating upbringing and a very fascinating perspective on life. Of course, he's conservative. Although, I do like having people with different opinions on the show if we can. I like dialogue. Me and Mr. Biad pretty much agree on a lot of stuff, but not everything. So it should be a fun day today. Mr. Louis Biad, thank you for joining us, sir.
Well, thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure and a privilege.
Absolutely. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm a lot like Louis here. I like talking about national stuff. I'm not too big into the local state stuff. And I'll tell you guys why, because I've been fighting for local politics, and I still do. I'm not going to stop, but I've been doing it for a solid decade now at a hardcore level, dedicated a chunk of my life to it. And honestly, man, it's just been getting boring to me. It's like the same old stuff. Until we get fair elections, until more people get engaged, which I'm trying to help do, trying to register Republicans to get people engaged, but until like those fair elections come through, it's kind of a boring topic for me.
Well, the gerrymandering that took place 5 or 6 years ago just assured that there will be no statewide representation of Republicans. It's just not going to happen for a very long time. And we've got District 2, Steve Pierce's old district, Yvette Harrell's district, that includes parts of the bluest parts of Albuquerque. That's an outrageous drawing of a district.
It was. It doesn't represent us at all. The southern state of New Mexico was super conservative. I was a huge fan of Yvette Harrell. And I'll speak to that a little bit too. I'm glad you brought up that point, because I felt like when she was running, it really galvanized and really amped up the conservative movement down here in the South. It really felt like the state was going to go red because we had so much confidence. She was winning so hard. Even despite the cheating, she still came back and won the next time around. She did.
Yeah.
But when they gerrymandered, man, I feel like it really put a dagger in the conservative
Look,
movement.
in what world should the southeastern part of New Mexico include Bernalillo County or any of those little blue dots up near Albuquerque? Steve Pierce couldn't win this, and Steve Pierce is years ago, but he had a chokehold on this. This was Steve Pierce, agricultural, rural community, and it's just not being fairly represented now.
Completely different worldview. I mean, southern Albuquerque is like hardcore, like city blue. These are different types of mentalities, different types of worldviews, and then you try to combine it with rural southern New Mexico. It's totally different. No. These smaller communities are really conservative. They're farmers or ranchers. They're third, fourth generational immigrants. A lot of people don't agree with the modern day Democrats in these areas. I mean, even the blue Democrats in these rural areas, like I'm talking about way down there in the southeast, of course, there's big oil country down there, but like Silver City, what else is there? Like Deming, Lordsburg, these are conservative areas for the most part. But they're still Democrat, but they vote conservative.
Exactly right. We're not as blue as a state as our representation reflects. That we shouldn't be radical AOC blue. We shouldn't be Deb Haaland blue. Conservative, old-fashioned Democrats, absolutely, that's probably where we belong, a light blue, but not the blue of Mamdani or AOC. That's not New Mexico. That's not most New Mexicans.
That guy really scares the hell out of me, Mamdani. I mean, he is a radical Islam. He's still pushing progressivism, socialism to a high degree, and that is the modern day Democrat. I mean, there's someone recently that got the Public School Board Commission here in New Mexico. He is what he self-proclaimed Mamdani Democrat, and that stuff kind of scares me. But before I go, I criticize the Democrats so much. I kind of want to talk about the Republican Party a bit, kind of criticize them a tidbit, because the SAVE Act hasn't gone through at all. Yeah. Super disappoints me. Yeah. And you come to find out that a lot of these guys, these U.S. senators who aren't trying to vote for the SAVE Act, is because they've been getting a ton of money from illegal labor lobbies. Right, and that's kind of the old school Republican, right? I mean, they wanted to be able to, build their corporate enterprises with really cheap labor. Yeah, and that's what the Republican Party used to represent, right?
Yeah, yeah. What we're seeing here is the butting of heads of the MAGA movement, of the President Trump, J.D. Vance, old Pat Buchanan, conservative Republican Party versus the George W. Bush hotel lobby, food and entertainment establishments. Right. People who want their grass mowed and their hotel rooms cleaned by cheap, illegal labor. And this is where the rubber is going to hit the road. The only way to get this done, and it's really interesting. I don't remember where I read this, but the reason they haven't abandoned the filibuster in order to pass the SAVE Act and other Trump initiatives is because, quite frankly, then they'll have no excuse not to pass the Trump agenda. The Trump agenda is different from the agenda of the Republican, old school, conservative, country club conservative agenda. And so they want to have an excuse not to pass these more populist motions. And so that's why they haven't voted to abandon the filibuster, because they don't have an excuse then.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I've run into that. Being so deeply involved with the Republican Party, I am part of the MAGA movement. That's what got me involved with politics. That's what got me in the Republican Party. And I do feel a little out of place at some of these gatherings. These people who've been Republicans for a very long time.
Yeah.
And they're not racist or anything, but it just feels like we just have a totally different perspective on things. And I try to talk to them and try to understand their worldview, but it just seems like they're really uncomfortable with the MAGA movement, and they have to be cool with guys like me because we're the majority. There's way more of us than them, and that's what kind of scares them, I guess you can say. But I'm always trying to look for ways for us to come together. But yeah, particularly with the SAVE Act, man, we got to get that pushed through. I don't know how we're going to get it through. Getting rid of the filibuster, that would be, mass immigration, more deportation, and then to go back to the point of cheap labor. What can you say about being able to get the cheaper labor? I mean, rather than just have these people get shipped over from these third world countries, I feel like there's got to be a way for them to get them to start working, and we can hook them up, maybe have them get path to citizenship without so much, as far as them just going and voting as illegal immigrants. I mean, there's got to be some kind of middle ground there, I feel like.
Yeah, and back in the 50s, there was the Bracero program.
That's right.
And so there's absolutely no reason why programs like that can be carved out and left in existence, so that if there really is a shortage of people in California, Arizona, New Mexico, Florida who want to harvest citrus or chili or anything else, strawberries, fruit, the program can exist. It has existed before, and we just turned our back on it because now, instead of the truth of getting these things harvested and to the store in a relatively price-conscious manner is not the goal. The goal is to radically change the composition of the electorate.
Yeah,
demography is destiny, and that's what these politicians want it to be.
Yeah, and that's why I really enjoy talking to you, because these are very important topics, especially with farming. I feel like they're trying to get rid of farming. The oil industry, the energy industry, it's so weird because we're in a blue state. We produce the second most oil in the country, but where does that money go? It doesn't go back into our state. And essentially, it's the oil lobby that controls the state, but we just cannot get any Republicans in office. So I feel like there's this like uniparty dynamic at the top here in New Mexico.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But there can be what are they calling it, a comprehensive program, right? There should be. There should be, if we limit illegal immigration, if we encourage people to get back to work, if we do it in a manner so that housing becomes less expensive, so that labor cost does go up for Americans, whether they're white or brown or black. All of this is better for the lower and middle classes as a comprehensive program to put people back to work, to make their lives more affordable, and to make their labor more fruitful. We're not the 1950s anymore, where one income can pay a mortgage on a home, have a car that's paid for, put your kids in decent schools. One of the parents, typically the wife, is able to stay home. That's not America now, and it's because we've just allowed all these radical changes to occur. Yeah. I'm saying I want to go back to the 1950s and the chauvinism and everything else, but that as a financial and economic model doesn't exist anymore, and there's really no reason why it shouldn't.
Right.
And the fact that that doesn't is why the Democrat socialists are attractive to this new generation. This new generation doesn't believe that there is a path to prosperity for them, or even to comfort. My wife and I were talking yesterday about how most households are one household emergency away from bankruptcy, right?
100%.
We're going to buy a fridge, or we're going to take a vacation to go see Aunt Sandy, right? That's the reality for some of the better homes in existence nowadays.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no path to that for them. And so what happens is they look for another path. This is what would be attractive. This is what attracted some of the MAGA votes, the disenfranchised, people in Kentucky, the disenfranchised youngsters that never vote Republican. They thought that the populist movement inside the Republican Party spoke to them. And if we eradicate that, if the old Republican Guard eradicates that, then the only thing they see that speaks to them and helps them and addresses their issues is socialism.
Yeah, that's the scary part too, because you can't really educate people on the fruits of capitalism, right? I mean, unless you've been an entrepreneur, or your dad was an entrepreneur, and you can see that it's a different mindset. There's a different amount of wealth and prosperity that you can enjoy in a capitalist type of environment. Because what we have now is it's already pretty much social, especially here in New Mexico. Everybody's living off welfare, everybody's on Medicaid, and I think that, you know, we got to get rid of the taxes on businesses, guys. I'm glad we're talking about this because we got about a 10% gross receipts tax here in Las Cruces. It's one of the highest gross receipts taxes in the country. And if you know anything about business, and you are a businessman, you know, we don't want to get too into that, so am I. A good business, guys, and I'm talking about you scale it, that's making millions of dollars a month, millions of dollars a year, up to the guy who's just, you know, getting by with a average salary annually. 20% profit margins on your business after you pay your taxes, after everything's paid for, is very high. So you're lucky, very, very lucky to get 20% profit. So most businesses get much less than that. So if you start taking about half of what your like max potential is right out the gate, you're really taking a lot away from the local community. That where they take that money and put it back in the community, they hire people, they expand their company, they can build generational wealth. So right out the gate, you're crippled here in Las Cruces, and I believe this is why we have a very huge shortage of good restaurants. All the good restaurants, especially with the lockdowns, there's not much local flavor here. It's all government buildings, it's all franchises, national franchises. Whereas you go to like Texas and El Paso, there's so many local restaurants, so much local flavor. It's not all government buildings, and I think it has a lot to do with the tax structure, man.
It does. Regulation. It's difficult to do business in New Mexico.
Yeah.
The mom and pop doesn't really stand a chance against the chains that can afford to come in and get a rubber stamp because they use the same floor plan, they use the same blueprint, they use the same discharge permits, and what they're going to do with their environmental programs and stormwater pollution programs and so forth. They have teams of engineers and teams of attorneys to help them address that in a way that mom and pop restaurants and mom and pop stores don't and can't. They don't even know where to start. They go down to the county and they're just completely overwhelmed by the process, by the bureaucracy, and the people that are there supposedly to help them, but it's just foreign to most people how these things work.
So I guess I'll solidify that point. It's like, unless we start having our government infrastructure, all these regulations, taxes start loosening up, and the people can't start enjoying a less tax burdensome business environment, it's going to be hard to educate this new generation on like, again, the fruits of capitalism. And so, yeah, the easy answer for them is going to be, and it's already happening, like you said in New York with Mondani's, like, we're going to get free goodies for everybody, even though we know it's failed for over a century.
How do we know that it's failed? Because the education that you received, the education that our parents received is different from the education that kids are getting nowadays.
Yeah.
They're not getting educated on the fruits of socialism and communism elsewhere. They're not getting, why is Cuba in the position that they're in? Where did the Soviet Union go? They're not hearing Pol Pot and Mao and Stalin and Lenin. They're not hearing that nowadays.
No.
All they're hearing is take from the haves and gives to the have-nots. But they're not hearing where that leads. Where that leads is to government control over every aspect of our lives, including and starting with our minds.
Yeah, communism is a very vampiric philosophy if you just look at the historical aspects of it and what came about from it. They don't really build much. They kind of just suck things dry. It becomes very totalitarian. It's killed the most people ever.
Yeah.
You know, and here we go having guys like Mondani. It's already failing. People are already mass, leaving New York, and I still hear these younger generations. It's so inculcated with how awesome socialism is, and it blows my mind, man.
Yeah. Well, it destroys, of course, economic incentive.
Yeah.
Of course, it destroys freedom, but it also destroys the soul. It destroys the soul, the dignity of the human. Mm-hmm. It destroys the dignity of the family, where the government takes over for the family structure. It is really antithetical to us as a faithful people, regardless of what your faith is, the government has to take the place of it.
That's right.
And as a people that are called to our own families, to our own, it takes the place of everything. And we look to the government first for everything, and that becomes our religion.
And it does come, it's implied with a very anti-God, atheistic style of government, a satanic one, if you will, because you can't, like in China, how they persecute Christians, they persecute Muslims and Islam, Falun Gong practitioners. You can't, like you were saying, you can't have any God or any entity above the government.
That's right.
And so that spiritual element, I don't think is talked about enough. Now, we can talk about it a little bit. Karl Marx did have poetry where he did mention, and he was had an affinity to Satanism and Satan, and that's the guy who wrote this whole philosophy. Do you know anything about that? Would you like to speak to anything about that?
Well, I think it was him that said that religion is the opiate of the masses. So what he was talking about is how that the people were foolishly engaged with their religion. But I believe that we are a people, there are very few true atheists nowadays. There are very few true agnostics. What happens is everyone has a God, but the God is a Christian God, it's a Jewish God, it's an Islamic God, all that is fine. But in the absence of that, people will put something as their God. They're either going to put it as themselves, or they're going to put politics and the government as their God. And if that happens, that becomes very dangerous because these things, look, they become so personal to this people that's when you have people who, we've seen the videos of people who are completely unhinged. They're the lady screaming at Trump's election. That's unhinged. Obama won, Biden won. I went to work the next day, right?
That's right.
But this is all they have in their lives is politics.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, they have delusion. The fact that they can sit and they can say, in my delusion, I am a woman, right? You are a woman. That is delusional, okay? And they are free to have that delusion. But in this reality where themselves is God, where they themselves is God,
Yeah,
they believe that this delusion has to become my reality.
that's right.
And that's dangerous, and it's not something that we can really allow to happen, because then we're all just walking around in a fantasy world.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it. I'm not for, how do you say, a theocracy, of course, but I think the Ten Commandments did inspire the Constitution, did inspire much of our criminal justice system.
Sure.
And so as you have God in our government here like we do, it's appealed to the Declaration of Independence 4 times, we have an appeal to a higher morality. We have a higher sense of purpose, above kings. That's why we founded this country, because God is above kings and their authority. You go to Marxism, you go to communism, you remove that higher moral authority, and then you're left to your own devices, right?
Or the government, right? Instead
Yes.
of the government allows me to do this, that, or the other, the founders of this country believed that they were endowed by a creator with these rights.
That's right.
That the rights that we enjoy do not come from the government. Because they don't come from the government, we are allowed to have these rights by the government. That's completely contradictory and foreign to what the opinion of our founding fathers were. That's why America exists, is because they said, no, it's not what we're allowed to do by our government. This is what God has endowed us with the rights to do, and the government gets in the way of that.
And what sucks, man, is that these philosophical inquiries right here, this kinds of dialogue, it just needs to be had on a
And some
public
of it
level.
feels trivial, right? I'm
Yeah.
gonna throw tea into the ocean. It sounds trivial.
Yeah.
But it's that, and it's every aspect of your life. Can the government shut down schools? Can the government shut down restaurants? My right to make a profit for my family, the right to educate my children, the right to go to church, right? The right to enter religious institutions, the right to see my parents in a nursing home, right? We all saw the sad videos of the people knocking on the windows of the old folks' home where they couldn't see them, right?
Right.
People sitting outside of churches with masks on, outside, sitting in their own cars, kneeling in parking lots. That is what the government then feels they have the right to take away from us when they really don't.
Yeah, and I just Like I was saying, the unfortunate thing is that the kids these days, these younger generations who didn't have the education that we did, and you read a lot too, right? I mean,
I enjoy reading.
yeah, you enjoy reading, and I do too. I've read a lot of books. I've studied this stuff, but I don't think most kids, Gen Zers, could have this conversation. I don't think they have any concept of
No,
these
all
things.
they say is what I say and what I believe. My delusion is reality, and you have to accept that.
Yes.
Use my pronouns.
Yes.
That's not my truth. No, truth is truth. What you have is your opinion, your delusion, your fantasy. That's fine, but don't ask or require me to take part in it because your truth is a weird word. This is my truth.
So I don't know how we get back to getting these kids, into this space, or even just the America in general. Because even though Trump won with 80 million votes, which is a good chunk of America, we still run into this knowledge gap with us and other people. I do my best to have these debates. I constantly argue with the younger generations, but I'm pretty much done with that. As far as I'm concerned, unless we get another Charlie Kirk going, because I think that's why they took him out. He was just so powerful in changing the mentality of the youth of this country and the world that they could not have that.
Yeah, but I don't know how radical of a change it needs to be, right? In the latest election, Trump beat Kamala Harris by a fair amount. He won all 7 swing states.
Yes.
Why? Because, first of all, because the Democrats nowadays are beholden to the radical wing of their party. They're no longer the party of JFK, they're the party of AOC.
That's right.
Okay? So most people are, I would argue, most people in Kentucky, most people in Arizona, most people in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, they're looking for a reason not to vote for the weirdo left.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, who won't they vote for? They won't vote for the Mitt Romneys and the George Bushes. They don't really want to vote for the John Thunes, okay? They want to vote for a normal person who wants to see them have the right. They don't have to go to church, but they want to have the right to go to church. They want to have the right to live in a realistic country. They want to have an economic system that creates a path forward for them. Yeah. And that's what Trump was supposed to be. Trump was supposed to be a populist. J.D. Vance, a populist. They were supposed to create an agenda that protected American jobs and American interests. And that, like I say, it's not a radical idea. That is something simple, and it's normal, and it's what the country used to be. And now it's become radical only in that the other side is completely against that. So
Right.
it doesn't have to be something magical that attracts people to vote for guys that think like you and me.
No.
It just has to be a normal thought process for normal people. That's it.
Very, very good point. Because even I can remember back in the Bush days when I was young, I didn't even vote yet, but everybody's, I can have a beer with Bush. That was kind of the whole, he was like kind of a normal folksy kind of a guy. Yeah. And Trump was kind of like, he portrayed himself to be like this blue collar kind of a guy because he worked with these construction workers and cooked out for them and took care of his people. And then for me, J.D. Vance was going to be the next generation of that. But we just talked about that last episode with him on Joe Rogan. Man, he did not come off like a normal person at all. I mean, he seemed to me very pretentious.
I agree with that. I thought that he looked very uncomfortable talking about 3 or 4 different issues. I thought he looked like a guy who couldn't say what he wanted to because it's difficult to be the vice president. You have to go on whatever program. It used to be David Brinkley and George Stephanopoulos, but now it's podcasts like this one and Joe Rogan. You have to go on those shows and you have to toe the line of what your boss tells you to. And he looked like a guy who was not totally in tune with the Trump agenda since he was elected. He would have been more comfortable talking about what the agenda was supposed to be during the campaign. It was supposed to be no wars. It was supposed to be build a wall and the great, the largest deportation effort. That I believe is right up J.D. Vance's alley. But when you talk about the Iran war, when you talk about the fact that the Epstein files were bungled or are still being withheld, that he looked like somebody uncomfortable with that.
So let's talk about those latter 2 issues because I couldn't agree anymore. I think, with the Iran war, he kept harping on the point, well, they can't have no nuclear weapons. No, look, they can get nuclear weapons. We know that they have the capability. They might not have the launch capability, but they have the ability to make nuclear weapons. That's well known. And so that particular talking point was from President Trump. I mean, you can tell. And I didn't feel comfortable with it, and it didn't seem like he felt comfortable with it either. So I agree with you there big time. We need to get out of that Iran war. We'll go back to that later. And then the other point was the Epstein files.
Yeah.
That it could, what people don't understand is that the people in the Epstein files it's our own people. It's CIA. He admitted there on the podcast that he was Mossad.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you just scratch behind the surface a little bit, you learn who actually recruited Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. It was Donald Barr, Bill Barr's dad, and Donald Barr actually wrote a book. I forgot what it was called, but it was basically promoting, the sexualization of children. Very, very dark individual, and that's the guy who got Jeffrey Epstein involved with our government, and that is of our government. His son was Bill Barr, who was a former Attorney General of our country. And so, in my opinion, the Epstein files are mostly these three-letter organizations. It's mostly America, and it's very disappointing to learn what they're really into, what our country's been doing to the rest of the world for a very long time. And for whatever reason, President Trump doesn't want to release them. I disagree with that. I think we need to get it out, and we need to have that great awakening. However, that being said, we don't know everything. We don't see everything. But we did ask the president, we did ask our Congress to release those files, and they didn't do it to the fullest extent that we wanted to. So who's really in control of our government? It's an issue.
Yeah, there's a lot there. They asked Trump in his first administration why. Someone asked him, I don't remember who it was, why didn't you release the JFK files? And he said, because if you saw what I saw, you wouldn't have released them too. Now, we've since had the release, and it points to some combination of the CIA and communists and the industrial military complex.
That's right. Wow.
I think JFK, prior to Trump, most of Trump, was probably the last president, JFK and Richard Nixon, that really wanted to hold back the encroachment of these three-letter government operations on our lives.
Yeah.
And they were both taken down. I think Kennedy was, of course, assassinated
Took him out
by the government.
brutally.
Yeah. Nixon, I think there was less there than the history books say. But he had to go, and they just weren't about to assassinate two presidents, in a three-president span.
Back to back, pretty much. Yeah.
So there is a dark hand at play. There is a greedy hand at play. You mentioned Satanism earlier. I don't think we have to look to Satanism for everything. We can't say that Satan's behind every rock, because man is capable of some dark acts and some dark deeds, and the money and the desire to have a global hegemony. Though that's good enough for many people to want to control our lives, and that's probably what's behind all of these conspiracies that Vance and everybody else can't talk about. Epstein, JFK, things of that nature.
So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. I'm very on the fence on Mr. Vance right now. I do like him better than Marco Rubio, but yeah, back to the Joe Rogan podcast, those two issues in particular, you can tell he was uncomfortable, and you can tell he knew more than he was letting off.
I agree with that.
And so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. He is still a vice president. It is a tough job. And so
I would say if he runs for if he gets the nomination, at that point, I think the rules change, because he has to, and everybody understands, even Trump would understand that he has to become his own man. He has to be allowed to become his own man. And when I say he, I'm not talking about J.D. Vance. I'm talking about any vice president that runs for president, okay, that gets the nomination. They have to become their own man. So I do like J.D. Vance. Personally, I can't imagine a lot of the other Republican candidates naming Supreme Court justices and taking this populist agenda forward. I think there are a lot of pretenders. But
yeah,
look for an interview from him 6 weeks, 2 months before the next election. If he's the nominee, I think he'll be allowed to really speak for himself again, rather than being an employee of the administration. And I think that's fair.
Well, look, the people that I really liked in Trump's administration, like Joe Kent, Tulsi Gabbard, they've left.
Right.
That's
exactly right.
And the whole MAGA movement, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, I liked Massey too. Yeah. They're all gone now. And Trump's kind of surrounded by these hawks. These people are very pro-war. We didn't want to go into Iran. Joe Kent advised him, the Pentagon advised him not to go to Iran. J.D. Vance couldn't really talk about it. He kept harping on with no nuclear weapons. They have nuclear weapons, so what are we there for? Yeah. And it wasn't really our war. I mean, Netanyahu brags about how he got us to go to war for them.
Yes.
And then here we go. We have the Jewish lobby, AIPAC, about to take over our military, our military intelligence, and they're already dictating who we do and don't go to war with. Netanyahu brags about it. Yeah. And so that stuff worries the hell out of me, man. We shouldn't have any foreign governments involved with our country on that much of an intimate level. We have so many enemies. We've got the Chinese, we've got the communists, we've got the radical Muslims, radical Islam, and then now we have the Jewish lobby. And Israel's the most unpopular country in the world. Everybody knows that they're up to no good in terms of their government. So what are we going to do about that? Do you even see a way out of it? I don't see a way out of it. I think it's going to go through, man.
Well, it could, but people are more free to even discuss this issue now than they were 20, 30 years ago. You couldn't discuss the influence that the Israeli lobby has on the U.S. government.
Yeah,
and I don't begrudge them that. I think every outside country has influence or is trying to influence U.S. policy. Yeah. That's their prerogative. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't think that all of our representatives are always looking out for our interests. No. And that is now beginning. We can discuss this now. Yeah. It's the Overton window has shifted.
That's true.
To where this can be discussed now. Right. 20 years ago, if you even mentioned this, if you even smelled like an anti-Semite, your political career was done. True. And now it can at least be discussed. So hopefully, there is a point where we can at least discuss this. I'm not in favor of anything other than saying there is pressure on federal government, on the U.S. government, to do things on behalf of other countries, whether that's Ukraine, whether that's non-governmental organizations, whether it's Israel. Let's at least acknowledge that because it's true, okay? And then let's begin the process of trying to encourage our representatives to look out for the interests of the people in Kentucky and Indiana more than the people in Tel Aviv or Kiev. So hopefully this is the beginning of that.
And I don't want a blanket statement. I know many great Jewish people that are very pro-America, that don't agree with what's going on. And most of the Israeli people don't agree with what Netanyahu's doing. They just don't. They've been hijacked, much like our government's been hijacked from the American people. And so I don't want to go on this like anti-Semite tire. That's not what I'm trying to do at all. But what I'm saying is that we have more enemies than one. I don't like the fact that people focus on the Jewish lobby and that's it. It's like, bro, this is America. We're the most free country in the world. Everybody's going to admit that. The world admits that. But we've got the Chinese. We've got radical Islam. We also have these other countries, like Israel, who's strongly influencing our Senate and our Congress more than we are, you can argue. And that's something that we have to talk about and deal with. And yes, I agree with you. The fact that we've gone through this whole circle and now we're actually open to have this, because I didn't know. I was blindsided. I was like zero focused on China. I was zero focused on radical Islam. And then here we go. It's like, oh man, AIPAC is funding like 70-80% of all of our politicians for the most part, both parties.
Yeah, if you read alternative media, and I don't mean weirdo, I'm just talking about podcast, Joe Kent you mentioned, Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you listen to them, you can kind of put a picture together. And what I think happened is pretty simple. I think that the Israeli government led President Trump, and not necessarily his advisors, because at that point his advisors were not unimind. They were Joe Kent, they were Tulsi Gabbard. They convinced President Trump that with a minimal investment from U.S. power, hard power, that the Iranian people were ready to rise up and have a counter-revolution. Okay? That's, I think, what happened.
That didn't happen at all.
And that has not happened.
At all.
And so we've had to we've ended up killing 3 or 4 or 5 different iterations of a new Iranian government.
That's right.
And the people of Iran still have not risen to take over. And I think it's as simple as that. I think it's as simple as whether they really believed it or not, Israeli intelligence and Israeli government, namely Netanyahu and any ambassadors to the U.S., they led President Trump, and I think this is his baby, President Trump to believe that a minimal investment would lead to springtime in Iran, and that clearly hasn't happened.
So they lied to him. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. They lied to
Yes.
him, much like they lied to us with the Iraq. Weapons of mass destruction, and I know of many great Jewish people. Okay, it's just like I'll finish on this point here. They've won the most Nobel Peace Prizes in the world. These guys are high IQ people, right? But they have their own agenda. They have their own country. It's a very small country. They can't really sustain being in that little pocket of the Middle East forever. They're under attack.
Right.
So I understand why they have an expansionist type of mentality. I just don't want it to be at the expense of the American people. Our domestic issues still need a lot of attention. We still need to be deporting people like crazy. We haven't arrested Fauci. You've got these these Somalians running around and all this fraud, all over the country.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, I don't really want to deal with these guys overseas, man.
Ultimately, if the conversation in October, September, November is anything other than costs have come down, it no longer costs $100 to fill up your vehicle, the cost of eggs, gas, milk, and bread, if that needs to be the conversation that Republicans are having, it needs to be the conversation that they're saying the prices are cheaper now than when we were elected in 2024. If the conversation is still Iran or anything, or Epstein, UFOs, aliens, if it's anything other than the price of living, then the Republicans are probably in for a shellac.
They're toast, bro. They're toast because the whole thing with Trump is that he was going to bring the Trump economy back because 2016, 2020 was badass. Yeah. It was a flourishing economy. He's this real estate mogul. He's this hardcore business guy, billionaire guy. He was supposed to share that wealth with us, the common people, with the American people and the business people. And you're 100% right. If any conversation outside of the economy is had, even late August and beyond, we're in some big trouble. And it doesn't seem like we're going to get that. It's like with the Strait of Hormuz being closed, all of our food supply is going to be cut off with the fertilizer and everything.
That's exactly right.
The price of gas is very high.
Yes.
Right now it's high. It's $4 a plus right now.
Yeah, somebody told me, or I read it somewhere, that the Iran war is magical because my truck used to hold $100 worth of gas, and now it holds $140 worth of gas. And that's what the average person is going to see as having been accomplished in Iran. So yeah, this needs to go away, just politically speaking. There's a whole lot of, there's human rights issues, there's human fatalities, it's so sad. But just politically speaking, this needs to go away for President Trump to have a successful midterm election.
I don't know if it's possible.
I don't either.
It looks pretty grim.
I don't know how you go from here to everything's fine in 6 weeks.
Couple weeks, man.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. I think another option could be, and this is like the whole QAnon, where we go one, we go all type of dudes, and they're thinking that there's going to be military in the streets. Coming up in this next election, we're going to get fair elections. The Democrats have been cheating so bad for so long that even though Trump, and albeit Trump's poll numbers are low, the Democrats' polls are even lower. Yeah. So it's kind of a race to the bottom right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know how possible that is either. I don't believe in that really hardly at all, but it's something that's talked about on the internet.
Yeah. Harmeet Dillon in the Department of Justice said today that they're going to pursue any voter fraud, and they're going to use the broken window theory. You know the broken window theory?
No.
Broken window theory is essentially how Rudy Giuliani cleaned up New York. He said, we see a broken window in a building, we're going to fix it. And we're going to care about the little things so that everybody knows that. And consequently, quality of life crimes are going to go away. We're going to fight those, and it's going to make the big issues take care of themselves, okay? So she said, we're going to use the broken window theory, and we're going to prosecute every instance, even if it's 6 illegal votes. This is in light of New Jersey, where they found 6,500. Now it's become, I think, 10,000 people voting illegally, that they're going to go and they're going to highlight and they're going to prosecute those everywhere. Little steps like that might help, but ultimately they need a big, large win in the form of the Save America Act.
Well, I like that perspective. I think a bottom-up approach is appropriate. In a lot of cases with the government, a bottom-up approach is the way to go. And I'll give you, for instance, Texas and Florida, hardcore red states. Their Republican parties, they have this approach where the precincts and the precinct captains have all the power. Yeah. They can register Republicans. They can have their own basic little, corporation to get their communities involved. So that's kind of a bottom approach that I like there.
Sure.
Sounds like that's what they're going to do here. Will they actually do it? Do they actually need the military? Will we go into martial law? I don't think so, man.
No, that's that's a boogeyman. They're saying that, you know, Trump is not going to leave office. Trump is not going to let anybody
Yeah.
elections happen. He's not going to, you know, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But you know, you mentioned, this is interesting talking about Trump.
Yeah.
He's a polarizing figure, and you mentioned Thomas Massey. You mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene. You mentioned Joe Kent.
I like him.
Yes, but Trump makes it very difficult on these people who agree with 85, 90% of Trump's agenda. And that used to be fantastic. He used to call those people allies. But he personally then goes out and he attacks these guys as hating Trump, and he gives them fancy nicknames and everything else. You can't let, I think Ronald Reagan said, you can't let the good, the perfect be the enemy of the good. Okay? Certainly the good enough. I agree with Trump on 85, 80, 90% of things. That ought to be good enough. I would vote for him over, you know, anybody the Democrats put up again. But if you ask him if that's good enough, no, we have to be 100% behind him, regardless of the missteps that he makes, but the strategic errors that he makes. We ought to be able to call him out and still be involved in this big tent party. But he doesn't seem to be a fan of that philosophy.
Well,
what say you?
I am a tinfoil hat style wearing conspiracy theorist to a certain degree. I mean, I am. I mean, it's just who I am as a person. So, you know, Trump has been a master of the art of the deal or the art of war for a long time. I mean, he talks about it openly. It's like you've got to show weakness when you're strong. You got to show strength when you're weak. And so when your biggest allies and you go after them like that, that shows massive weakness. Yeah. I mean, it really detracts from his credibility.
That's a good point.
And I think that it's at a certain level done on purpose. You know, for whatever reason, like they're positioning Tulsi Gabbard, say, for another, you know, something else in the future, positioning Marjorie Taylor Greene to maybe expand the MAGA movement. Same thing with Massey. I think they use him to expose how much influence the Israel lobby has in America. Yeah. I mean, who even knows who? I don't even know who beat Massey. I don't even know. Yeah, he raised like 25 million at the very end and then kicked his ass. But and even that election was controversial.
Sure.
And so I feel like it's so blatantly, obviously bad for the MAGA movement for him to go after the people who've supported him the most. I have a certain part of me feels like it's done on purpose.
So you think it's 4D chess?
60, 70, you know, and for many reasons. Like even Tucker Carlson, look at how much he was Mr. Trump's best friend for the longest time. Yeah. Now he's throwing him under the bus harder than anybody. Yeah. And so all these guys, you know, MTG, Tucker Carlson, Joe Kent, Massey, even Alex Jones was one of his biggest allies, and he's throwing Alex Jones under the bus too, Candace Owens. But yet those people still espouse the same values that got him in office in the first place.
That's correct. Who changed?
Well,
I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene changed. I think Trump's actions are not representative of what he ran on. And I think that he knows that. I think he knows he got conned into a war, and I think he's lashing out just because he's between a rock and a hard place.
Well, there's a human element.
He's there now.
Yeah, he's there now, and we have to realize that he's a human being. This is reality. He had to raise a ton of money to beat this Democrat machine they just basically print money, like Elon Musk said. He found computers in the treasury where they were just clicking money into existence. Yeah. And that's who we're up against these Democrats. So he's got to raise money. He's got a ton of money from these foreign lobbies, and he's got to pay up to a certain degree. That's how it looks like to me. He's got to pay up.
I agree.
I think part of the deal to get him in there was like, all right, we'll get you in there. You'll get some of your agenda stuff in there, but you got to go to war, bro. Yeah. You've got to go to war with Iran. Whether you like it or not, we're going to war. And I think he wanted to get it out of the way early in his administration, so the last couple of years he can go back towards the MAGA movement stuff. Okay. That's just my theory. It's all going to come down in the very near future. We're going to see because, like you said earlier, we've got 6 weeks to really get ready for the midterms. Yeah. And so we're going to see if my tinfoil hat theory it holds up. I hope it is. That's my hopium right there. Because it just looks looks horrible that he did that to MTG and Massey. I mean, it embarrasses us. Yeah,
he took a lot of money, and that kind of money, there's always strings attached.
Has to be. Yeah, yeah. So that's just my theory. That's just my theory.
That's interesting.
And I still have faith in President Trump to a certain degree. We are getting some arrests done. There are some things going on the back end. I mean, look at how far we've come just in this 1 year. We've got all this massive Medicaid fraud that we learned about. We learned about how much control other lobbies have in our government besides China. Yeah. You know, us as a civilization have really gotten awakened to a lot of things. And now we don't have the Epstein files out. I think people just really need to scratch deeper than the surface on that and really understand that there's a spiritual element to this consciousness that you've got to take into account when you look at President Trump and what he's doing and what's happened to us over the decades. Overall, I am hopeful. I'm not really scared. I try to live in fear. And so we can also talk about the Trump 2028 hat. You know, he was yesterday wearing his Trump 2028 hat. Since we've just thrown him under the bus and came back and supported him, we're going back and forth on him. I think we're both playing politics here a little bit, which is fine. It's just this is my true beliefs in him, right? I mean, would you vote for him in 2028, given the situation now?
Well, if he was the nominee?
Well, so let's say who's he going to run against? He's running against Rubio, Vance, and it's him.
Yeah, I don't think those guys. If he comes up with a legal path to have a third term, and it's immediately going to be challenged at the Supreme Court, and you're going to know in a very short period of time. Personally, I don't see any way that happens. But if he does, there will be no primary. There will be no primary, not because he's a king and because he wills it to be, but because he sucks all the oxygen out of the room. And we're not going to go through another charade. In 2016, remember, he called everybody children's names, and slowly, one by one, everybody fell by the side.
I love that, by the way.
In 2024, they had debates without him. And just not showing up to debates, say what you will about Trump, that was politically brilliant. He let them think they were playing in the kids' sandbox. Well, he was the big guy on the block. So that was smart. That's what's going to happen again. There won't be a primary because he will win. And he will take all the money and the oxygen out of the room. And then the answer to your question is, would I vote for him if he was the only guy on the Republican side? Of course. Would I vote for him in a general election? Of course. Who else are you going to vote for? Who are you going to vote for? Gavin Newsom, AOC? Who are you going to vote for?
No, you drive a hard bargain now. Who are you going to vote for? All these Trump critics out there. I mean, yeah, they say they're conservative Republicans and they're really quick to throw President Trump under the bus, but push come to shove, say he gets over these hurdles with the Supreme Court and stuff, he does articulate some legal pathway to run again.
Yes.
Who the hell's going to beat him?
No. There's not going to be a never-Trumper in the Republican primary that can beat him. It's not going to happen. But I don't think, I think there's going to be objections to this right away. They're going to go to the Supreme Court. And regardless of the veracity of the path that he finds, there's no way it gets past the Supreme Court. There's no way.
It does there is some credence to it, though, in my view, because as soon as Trump got in there, you had Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, like he's going to do a 2028 run. I mean, the big dogs who have predicted the future for a long time.
Okay, but I don't know. Explain to me the path. I have not heard. I've not heard how that happens.
A constitutional convention. You know?
So okay, so you're talking about a change to the Constitution. That you're talking about that. You're talking about. I'm saying that under existing laws and rules, that there isn't a path.
Well, the way I've seen it, and with the Constitutional Convention, you can do anything.
Yeah,
and that's
I don't think he's popular enough to win that now.
At this point, he's not. Yeah. He could at any point release the files, the Epstein files. He can get out of the war, and he can, he can do some quick things to gain favor pretty fast. I mean, the people are pretty easily bought off.
I understand.
And so, Constitutional Convention, 80% of the states, you can do anything you want. He won every state in the country when he ran in 2024.
If you remove
the voter ID states that he lost.
Yeah.
So you get voter ID, he's won every state. He can win a constitutional convention. He can do whatever he wants. Now things got to get pretty crazy for it to get to that level, but there is pathways there. These radical changes, these abrupt changes that people always want to talk about, these conspiracy theorists, I just don't see it happening because, we've been alive for how long, doing this for how long? Those radical, abrupt changes just don't happen, bro. It's not like grounded in reality, right? It had to be some kind of like World War III scenario to push us into something like that.
Yeah. Well, look, far be it from me. He was dead politically in 2021. He was prosecuted. He was indicted. He was.
That's right.
He owed hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, he's fought back and he's countered and been victorious on a lot of those fronts, but he was politically dead. And he came back. This is remarkable what he's done.
True.
I think though that there is enough fatigue, even guys like me. I don't know if I would support a third term. If it was solely on me, I think I'm ready for someone else to. I think I'm ready for someone else to espouse true MAGA, original OG MAGA.
Yeah.
But not be Trump. That's what I'm ready for.
No, and I'm right there with you, man. Because look, the human brain basically turns to mush past 80 years old. That's just
No, that's a good point too.
that's just science. I mean, look at President Trump now. The dude can't stay awake, in meetings anymore. He's having a hard time. Which I'm not trying to give him that much of a hard time. It's still a million times better than Kamala Harris, Biden.
Yeah.
But another term would put him at 86, man. Around there, 87.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if that's feasible physically. Maybe if he's got some technology involved, we can salvage his brain deterioration. but and at the same time, maybe he does get that extra run, and then J.D. Vance is his vice president again, and he slips in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, physically it doesn't seem possible. Constitutionally it doesn't seem possible. But yet there he goes with his Trump 2028 hat. It's crazy.
Yeah. How much of that was just him playing and drawing a reaction out of the White House Correspondents' Dinner? He announced it in Georgia. Do you remember? I'm here to announce my candidacy.
Yeah.
I think he likes playing with these people. And if it was the occasional thing like this is well done. This is funny.
That is great.
When he attacks people personally, that's the stuff I'm getting tired of. And not because I don't agree with him politically, like I said, on 90% of the things, but God, he shoots himself in the foot. And it's just, it's fatiguing, if that's a word.
Yeah, and I've got some political fatigue, man. I really do, especially with the local politics here in New Mexico. It's just become so redundant and just so like, yes, Michelle Lujan Grisham's a freaking commie. She had a horrible run, the lockdowns. She does terrible things. We've got satanic temples, funding abortions here in New Mexico. I mean, it's just the education keeps getting worse. I mean, man, I got political fatigue on the local side. The national side, I do too, especially when you see President Trump hammer MTG. I mean, he was nasty to her, man. Because I agree with like 96% of the things that she said.
Yes.
So when he hammers her, it's like an attack on me. It's like, bro, like this is what you ran on. This is what we were supposed to be doing here.
Right.
But aside from that, we can't quit. We can't falter. We still got to get engaged. There's massive corruption, especially here locally. There's a lot of corruption going on in the churches. There's a lot of corruption going on in the schools. I mean, I hear about it all the time. And so we as a people, we can't give up. We got to keep pushing harder. We've got to get fair elections now. Patrick Byrne came out recently. I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you know Patrick Byrne is the former CEO of Overstock.
No.
He's someone that's been championing election integrity for a while. He came out and explained how Dominion has been stealing our elections. Mm-hmm. It's been the Chinese and the Venezuelan government. Basically, when our votes are casted, it goes on to a Chinese software. They articulate the votes as they come in.
Yeah.
And then they spew out the results.
Yeah.
And so all this is coming out. The USPS is not certifying or taking in ballots that aren't, verified U.S. citizen ballots.
Right.
We're using actual, what are they called, watermark ballots now. So we're making these big changes with the elections. The question at this point, I believe, is do you think that the Democrats have been cheating so much for so long that even a slumped Trump in the polls, a downtrodden Trump, still wins? Republicans still win because it's down ballot stuff. If President Trump's doing bad, the Republicans are going to do just as bad. So I think, and this is just me having my faith in President Trump and just we the people, that we will have somewhat fair elections this election cycle. And I think there is a good chance, I believe there's a good chance that even though President Trump's on the downward, we can still win a lot of races.
In 2026?
Right now, this
Right
year.
now.
Yeah, this year, right now. That's just my belief. I don't know. Fact check me. Grill me if you want, Louis. What are you thinking?
Well, I think that there's going to be the same amount of fraud that we've seen in the last several election cycles. We saw in California. You saw what happened to
Spencer Pratt. Yeah.
First of all, it's crazy because on election night, there were the three. There was Karen Bass, there was Spencer Pratt, and then there was this third candidate whose name I just can't remember.
I don't remember her name either. But yes, she won.
But what's not only that, but how did all of the votes that come in after, how was it that not many of them, by a percentage, were even for Karen Bass? Now, shouldn't, if the first 90% of all votes that were cast in person, right, broke down, 40%, 30%, 30%, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't the ballot votes have been roughly similar to that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Forget about Pratt for a minute.
That's right.
Look at the percentage of votes that Karen Bass got unwrite-in votes. And that's what's most suspicious to me.
Yeah.
They were damn near zero.
That's right.
It's almost like somebody wanted to set it up so that it was going to be one radical liberal versus a second radical liberal, and didn't even want to make it look legitimate, because Karen Bass and Pratt should have gotten enough votes proportionately to where this third candidate, and I apologize, I just can't even remember her name,
I can't either.
should not have gotten enough to overcome number two, but there weren't even enough for Bass to make this look legitimate to me.
And we've seen that over and over again. That's what you call an inorganic growth curve. You know, organically they should have all had.
What do they call it? The F?
Yeah. They should have all came up together rather than just when we had that here in 2018 with the Herald. 4,000 ballots got dumped in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Every single one was a Democrat ballot.
That's right.
Not date, not timestamp. Now, it's statistically impossible for every single one of those to be Democrat ballots.
Sure seems like they come in and say, okay, how many do we need?
How many do we need?
And then just dump the bin.
So I don't think President Trump can allow that to happen again. I think we're going to end up getting some civil war stuff going on. If we witness the abject theft of our elections again, I think that people, you'll start to get vigilantism. I just don't think we're too far from that, especially in places like California, here in New Mexico, the hardcore blue states where we know we've been robbed and been had. Colorado, Seattle. We already had it in Trump 2020. We had this vigilantism go down over there.
Yeah.
And so, I think he's going to do something about it. Other than that, we're coming up on the hour here. Is there anything else you wanted to go over here, man?
No, I appreciate you having me on your show. I appreciate I watch your show. I appreciate all your viewers. And it's great to have a counter voice in New Mexico for all of the usual stuff that you hear coming out of New Mexico.
That's right.
So my hat's off to you.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for watching the show. And thank everyone else for tuning in. Please like the show, share the show, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. I know me and Lewis, we were mostly national this time, but that's just the kind of guys we are. And I really enjoy talking at this level with certain people. Well, I like local politics too, guys, but man, like I said before, I got some fatigue. I got New Mexico fatigue right now. Maybe I'll come back around. Probably as we get closer to the election here, I know for a fact we'll hit into local politics for now. But I always end on prayer. Let's end on prayer here. Lord Jesus, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to communicate with the state of New Mexico, with the people of the world, and espousing your values, Lord. And we just pray that you protect us through all these radical changes that we're going through as a species and as a country. And we just pray that we stay focused and all things that we do are for you, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, thank you so much.